If you don't have a state ID in Florida, you can't work. So these vets would line up early in the morning, walk, because they don't have transportation, they don't have money for it, and walk 3 to 4 to 5 miles to a place to find work, only to find that there is no work when they're a vet. Because they'll ask, are you a vet? They'll say yes. They don't give them work. And yet every day they go through the same ritual, hoping that someone will say, okay. One of the reasons you find so many vets in Florida is because it's at least warm there some of the time. When I was filming, it was 40 degrees one day, but it got down to 28 the next day. I went into camps where I saw people who, majority of people do not have tents at all. And they got a sweater on or they got a jacket on. Hard to look at someone at 28 degrees that don't even have a coat. And that was a lot of vets. I found one guy, you didn't see him in this cut of it, but when he opened his shirt, I saw that he had blood stains. He had just had heart stents put in 2 weeks before and had a little prescription. It was all scrunched up in his hand. And I said, why don't you have antibiotics? Because you have infection. He said, I don't have the money for the prescription. I said, why not? He said, the VA won't cover it because they say it's not military related. And as a result, he had a hard time walking. And yet every day he still walked in trying to get work. I said, how are you supposed to work if you're too sick to be working? He said, well, otherwise I have no food. And he showed me he had no food. Now, how long has it been since you ate? 3 days. I got a question then. What happens when we have no problem spending $5 billion a week in Iraq and Afghanistan, all of which goes for corruption? Governments which acknowledge they're corrupt. No one disputes that all that money is wasted. But we can't afford $1 for a vet. What's wrong with that, President Obama? Oh, I forgot. You don't talk with homeless vets, do you? Or anyone in your organization, or anyone in the VA, or anyone in Washington, D.C., or any of the politicians. They would know a homeless vet if they saw one. And that pisses me off. But that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to stay, because the body politic in our society does not care about those who are disempowered and don't have advocates. And the vets don't have advocates. That's why I did this program. But I'm a person who's an optimist. I believe that if enough human beings find that a problem exists, they can at least in their own way address it. I do not believe that these people have to stay this way. I do not believe that our government is completely indifferent, though most of the policymakers are, unless they're forced to be otherwise. So how I believe we have to address it is first understand there is a power base. There's 30 million vets in the United States. That means that there is at least 120 to 150 million Americans, between 1/3 and 1/2 the American population, who know a vet because it's a brother or sister, a father or a cousin. They're just not organized anywhere. They're not advocating. They're not marching anywhere. So we have to be their voice. Because you spend some time in that situation, you go down and spend a year unemployed, harassed, hassled, and then see how enthusiastic you are about going out and doing a march someplace. When you can't even have enough food to get you through a day, when you're living off 1 can of beans per day for a month, see if you want to go out and find a politician. First of all, understand, America has militarized its police. And even before they militarized the police, many of the police in Florida are one measure away from acting like fascist cops in Mussolini's Italy in the 1920s. You look at them the wrong way, you'll be in trouble. These people are afraid. They frequently don't even look you in the eye. They walk down the street, they're afraid a neighbor will say something to them. I spoke with the people around these camps, and they didn't want them there. The politician doesn't want them there. When members of a church, a legitimate church, are going to be arrested and put in jail for offering food, then I have to ask, how perverse are we as a society? How far have we come? Is this the 1% or 99%? This is the 99%, because those cops are not rich. Nor are the people who live in the houses who don't want a vet living near them. Nor the shopkeepers who say there's a vet out there sitting on a bench beside my store. I don't want them there. Nor people who look at someone and feel threatened by them. So there's no place for them. Now, for those of us who do care about solutions and do believe we can do something, we will. I don't care who doesn't show up to protest. I do care about the people who look at life optimistically and positively and try to each day appreciate what there is to live for. And yet I found vets who still have something to live for. Isn't it amazing how many people on both the right and left, the political dilettantes, the conceited nitwits, actually think that they know what an argument is, but never have been put into a position to have to face this. And yet I've seen these people are optimistic. I interviewed over 1,000 people, and they still felt they had something to live for, but they had nothing, and they were still positive. So if that means something, then there is still a spark there. There's a life force there. And my interest in it is saying, okay, you have something going for you, a will to live, a desire to work. How many people do you hear say, I'm willing to do any work? You know, but there is no work. All right. Then we have to do something. What is our step here? Our step is to inform people. Tell 10 people that you know this story. 10 people. Well, if you get 1,000 people, that's 10,000 people. And then ask each one of those, tell 2 people. Then ask each of those, tell 1 person. If you did that at the end of the year, you're impacting 30 to 40 million people. That causes change. Remember this. We got out of Vietnam with under 1/2 the American population protesting. We had a women's movement that demanded and got rights for women that did not exist before. 1% of the women were a part of that. 99% of the majority of women were disempowered, did not participate, 1% did. Think of all the things we've done with an empowered minority. I believe in the empowered minority. I do not listen to the naysayers. I do not complain about who doesn't show up. I do not look at what we can't do, because that is, everything is the cynic's approach. And guess what happens when you believe nothing will change? It doesn't. But look at all the things that have changed. We stopped mandatory vaccine in New York State with 24 hours notice. And the media came, and we met with them, and we met with the legislators, and we pushed back, and 260,000 of our audience called and wrote, and we got something done. We're now fighting the FDA. We're fighting the USDA and genetic engineering. We're fighting on many levels, many different issues, at least 12 important issues. The American public will respond, a lot of them, when they know the story. Americans don't want to hear this bad news. They want to believe it doesn't exist. So those who don't want to believe in this, deny it, look away, and as a result, it continues. But there you saw George Taylor in the cowboy hat, a man who himself was homeless, and today he's helping thousands. He goes to jail and get them out of jail. And it costs the state $1,000 to $1,500 for locking someone up who's done nothing. Remember the guy said, oh, you know, he stays out of trouble now. The trouble, his light wasn't working on his bicycle, so they put him in jail. He's walking down the street, but it was raining, and so that part of the sidewalk, you didn't hear the whole story, was flooded, so he walks by the curb, he went to jail. But in his mind now, he's trying to do everything not to get one of these cops to arrest him. But then now we know there's a quota system that the police have. They have it here in New York City. The police are corrupt everywhere. And we know that. And they'll get, well, we're just doing our job. Screw you, you're not doing your job. You should be helping people, not harassing them. But unfortunately, that's this kind of perverse mindset that we have today. I want to see that every politician gets this. Not that any of them will watch it, not that any of them will give a shit about what we see. They don't. We have sociopaths and psychopaths of politicians at every level, from the city council to the top. The people I met here have more in character and spiritual values than any politicians, with rare exception, that I know of. And when we do have a good politician who does care, like Dennis Kucinich, they make sure his area is redistricted and throw his ass out, right? And the left tries to denigrate a few of those who have something to say, but it doesn't meet their political ideological frame of reference, so they dismiss them completely, so we don't know even about what kind of fascism exists here. So let's talk with the media. Hopefully in the next year, we will be able to get some military tent cities built by getting advocates to say, okay, donate some land. My goal is to get people who have some land to donate land down in Texas and some other places where we can put up a city, because these people, some of the people you saw in there, like psychologists, psychiatrists, said they will come down there and help with this. So we can take 100 or 200 vets, give them the psychological treatment they need, give them the physical treatment they need for their Gulf War syndrome. Because a lot of the homeless people are homeless because they can't work, because they're too sick, because they have been exposed to biological agents, depleted uranium, and vaccines.